Right, exactly, Intimidator. The best, that last thing you said is the biggest thing, right?
Doubled my old salary.
We play the game how we want and we made it competitive. And if people want to take that and practice that in pub lobbies, then that's what they do. If people want to go for world records in pub lobbies, that's what they do. If somebody wants to fucking play Basement Bubba all goddamn month and make sure that nobody else really gets to have fun, but hey, it's for content, they're playing the game how they want, that's what they'll do. Hey, what it do, Fog Dwellers? It's your boy Q, and welcome back to YouTube. And I hope y'all are ready for a doozy today, because this might be my last YouTube video. I'm hoping not, but I'm knowing there's a good chance that it might, because I'm pretty sure the person that we're talking about today has ended more streamers' careers than Mixer did in 2020. But as someone who does spend a lot of time shoutcasting competitive Dead by Daylight for organizations like Dead by Daylight League, Dead by Esports, which I will be referring to multiple times as DBD over the course of this video, and Vigo's Court, along with multiple others and different events and things like that, it's hard for me whenever I see people, particularly content creators, especially like content creators with good like size platform, still saying that Dead by Daylight can't be competitive in 2021, almost 2022, especially considering when you look at like the link of the internet to gaming, and like since they've kind of been intertwined, how basically any game throughout the history of that little short time period, any game that has a healthy competitive scene has a higher and a longer peak, which would be good for like all size content creators, but especially your good size content creators, even if they have zero activity in said league or in said comp scene in general. But the one that, you know, got me to engage on Twitter lately, as some of y'all may have already seen, was a content creator who's like one of the biggest, I guess you could say, pillars that they use for their content that they create, is collecting the salt of both players and content creators, all off the premises of playing the game as the way he wants to play, which is perfectly fine. Admittedly, actually, even at first when I found Spook's content, I didn't quite understand someone who had to like make content strictly off of other like creators' rage, but then I realized that it wasn't like just creators, right? That this was just the way that he played, and this is how he played against creators and other players. So at least like the consistency was there, and again, like play however you want, that's perfectly fine. And again, that's his whole message, right? And if I'm being 100% honest with y'all, I've even grown to really enjoy Spook's content, and I'm sure I'll continue to like Spook's content even after this. Hopefully after the two of us can have a civil conversation as far as like a two-way channel, because I truly think that this whole case and everything that got it like wrapped up around this tweet was really just like a miscommunication of a thought other than a misinterpretation. And I'll be sure to break down that like in full before we're done, because I truly do believe that people take plenty of things about this game way too seriously, especially when we're talking about the way that a lot of these hooligans like to get rowdy in post-game chat and messages, right? Like we all know this like made up survivors rulebook for killer that survivors like to like shame killers on, and just like the vile stuff that gets said when people lose a freaking video game. And knowing that is where like a lot of Spook's content kind of like revolves around, leads me to think that like that's where the miscommunication came in. And I'll definitely address that point by the end, because if there's anything that I need you as the viewer to take away from this video, is the fact that like we really need to break the stigma of like those actions, right? Which if we're calling a spade is just a vile person being a vile person, like shitty people being shitty people, right? Like that isn't anything and shouldn't be acceptable, because it's like under the guise of that person being competitive, and it shouldn't be linked with competitive DBD or what the competitive DBD scene looks like. But when I saw this tweet, right? And then I saw response after response from Spook acting like he was onto something here, talking about, you know, how the game could never be competitive, even to the point where he had to like retweet his own tweet, acting like he really did something special, which again is just really super weird coming from someone whose platform of content creation is playing the game the way that you want. And the game isn't competitive, he says, right? That was like the main whole point of the tweet itself. But most important, and I want to bring your attention to this, right, is to the end. And the last four words that are used in the tweet, which are "and never will be." Those last 4 words being really critical as to the reason why I even responded in the first place. And look, you guys see that there at the end, that cute little sassy smile. We'll get to you in a second, my friend. So like, for anyone who may be new here, especially if we happen to get anybody coming in who wasn't familiar with me, right? Y'all may not know me because I try to keep my nose out of drama and Twitter wars. And besides, between like my shoutcasting load and content creation and being a dad, I just normally don't have time to like pay silly stuff like this any mind. But again, a couple of things. The game isn't competitive, and most importantly, never will be. Because you see, I know a bunch of people who play in leagues and tournaments weekly that would beg to differ about DBD not being competitive. And maybe before we dig into how DBD is already competitive, maybe you have this perception of whoever's watching this. Maybe the viewer has this perception that competitive, it means that like leagues and teams that pay out their rosters and have promoted events. So how about if we talk about some of the earnings that are like potential, that are up for grabs for these players in the competitive scene for DBD, right? Because some of these things are like monthly tournaments, things like that. And I know for some people, again, in this space, the word like competitive means that there's like a consistent like money payout, right? Like you're a pro because you're getting a paycheck to play a video game. So say for instance, people who have played in the past for like Overwatch League, 2K League, or even like Paladins Pro Circuit, like in past years. And I'm only using those 3 specifically because I know people for each one individually. And at least in seasons in the past, like during the seasons, if you're a competitive player and you're signed to a team, you're getting paid like a couple $100 a week, which is cool, right? Like obviously you're not like making a whole bunch of Benjamins, but you're paying some bills. You're getting yourself like, you're allowed to eat, and you're doing it all by playing a video game, which is super flippin' cool. But I want to point out something. Even when all this tweet fiasco went on, and I think this was all really just a miscommunication, but even Nightlight spoke out on the subject about how much he's won in competitive DBD, and we'll see the tweet here. All teams I played in, plus solo earnings, and that's for like 1v1 tournaments, for those of you guys who think that DBD isn't competitive and things like this don't go on, but roughly equals $20,000 from DBD comp. But some content creator says game isn't competitive. I'll be playing pubs, doing 360 jukes, moonwalking, complaining about killer perks. And I like that Nightlight's able to kind of keep a lighthearted feel to this, because obviously I'm sure he's not really taking too much of what Spooks is saying to heart, knowing what it's done for him and his family, right? But, and again, I get it. Spooks sees the need like in public matches at high MMR, like most people who are living the lovely experience of high MMR right now, which is the need for like a lot of tunneling, slugging, and camping, and justifiably probably assumes that that's all competitive DBD would be like. But if he wants to see what the competitive scene is like, he can always come join me on the desk during some games that we're casting. I mean, Paulie came and joined us on the desk at DBE and saw what the comp scene was all about. I mean, matter of fact, that was actually the day that there was $2,500 on the line for the winning team in a competitive environment. But don't worry, y'all. Don't worry. The guy who says we should let him camp everyone out in basement because he's playing the game the way he wants says that the game isn't competitive, so we shouldn't play it as such. I guess. It's just really weird timing, if I can be perfectly honest, because this is coming up not even 2 weeks after Swish's tournament, where we saw 2 big content creators in Otofu and Ralph on the desk with Justin from the prestigious and notorious Oracle squad. And like, not only were they hyping up how awesome the tournament was and the gameplay was, but also their communities. And even we saw bigger content creators tuning in on their streams and talking about it, like Scott Junn, for example. I mean, we're talking about content creators who used to meme about the competitive scene, now talking about how they can't wait for the next event. I mean, just being honest, like, bro, at this point, if you think DBD isn't competitive, it's just willful ignorance. Or maybe it's just the inability to admit that you misspoke and don't want to clarify, which I get, because like that would kind of admit that at the core that you were, damn, it is hard saying that word, even as a small content creator. No wonder Spooks is having a hard time saying it. Saying that he was wrong. There we go. Oh, man, even as a tiny content creator, like not even 300 subs, it's hard for me to say it. So hopefully when I get to Spooks' size, I'll still be able to say it. Granted, I don't end up in the next video about people taking this game too seriously, right? No, but like, for real, Spooks, let's hash this out, man. Like, let's, like, don't send the DBD mob after me, all right? Because again, like, while I truly think that he meant more along the lines of people taking the game way too freaking seriously, like, even as a Survivor main, when I do happen to play when I'm not squatting up with my community, like, I catch myself often calling out trashy people being trashy people in the post-game comments. And if that's where we were, like, truly, and if that's what we're talking about, I am 1000% on board. The only problem, though, here's the problem, YouTube, is I actually tried to get clarification multiple times in multiple parts of the Twitter threads that we've been talking about throughout the course of this episode. And while I couldn't get clarification on that, Spooks had no problem basically comparing competitive DBD to toothpaste eating. Really. Which was like really discouraging to see, right? Because like at first I understood the first response to my tweet about any game being competitive, having the higher peak and all that, and him responding with basically not understanding the asymmetric side and the RNG side. And the biggest thing to keep in mind is that just like every other competitive game and basically the history of competitive video games, especially esports, they're held in custom games with balancing restrictions in order to decrease RNG's impact. And I don't know if maybe it's just my background in like esports dating back to like the beginning of the MLG days with Halo and COD and thousands of hours in game battles. So maybe it's easier for like me to make that link and that connection. And again, if we want to talk about, well, DBD, like the comp scene doesn't have a league sponsored by the game itself. That's true. And it's a very fair point. But almost any league that is currently sponsored by either the game or like the publishing studio started in a grassroots environment, which is where the DBD scene is, right? But we did see DBD sponsor the Japan Championship at the beginning of this last year. And while we can all agree that that probably wasn't the best example of what competitive DBD is or what it should look like, it did show that the game is at least a little interested, at least a little bit, in diving into the competitive scene. And if Spook has any interest in like wanting to see how people have made this amazing game that we both enjoy to play so much to be able to be played competitively, I can try to talk to Dyer. We can get you on the desk over at DBE for some games like we did with Polly. Or, I mean, I can get you on the desk even while we're in some games for Vigo's Court, which just started up their regular season. And the best part is if you watch the competitive scene and feel like it isn't for you, you don't want to play comp, you don't want to be a part of comp, then like don't. That's fine. That's the beauty of it. You get to play the game how you want, right? Like you, I don't want to play against a 4-man comp squad or a wannabes comp squad in pubs while they're playing it like it's a comp game. That's just boring. And you know what? I would tend to agree, right? But I think that we can also be very fair and honest in saying that every single person that's going to get camped out in the basement by Bubba for the rest of the month probably also thinks that that play style is boring. And at the end of the day, it comes down to just simply being able to play the game the way that you want to play, and like you understand that others are going to play the game that they want to play the game. And if we don't agree with that, that's fine. Which again is, I have a sneaking suspicion that our thoughts on that are probably a lot closer than one who like read the Twitter threads would tend to believe. But, and most importantly, as I stated both in the beginning of the video as well as multiple times throughout the Twitter thread I referred to today, if we are indeed talking strictly about people taking things too seriously and wilding out in post-game messages and saying all this stuff that's crazy, that's bigoted, racist, and all this other foul stuff that we see, then I gotta be honest with you, Spooks, and anybody else who has this same point of like thought process that Spooks does. There is an entire competitive DBD community that would truly appreciate it if y'all could disassociate those actions with competitive DBD. And I don't think that's so much to ask. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk. If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, leave a like and a comment. That's going to help us out with that good old algorithm, all that stuff. We're chasing down 300 subs. We're almost there. We're really close, actually. And still trying to see if we can hit 500, which is a goal that we set basically at the beginning of the year for the end of the year goal. So maybe we can hit that here still. Make sure you smack that button, especially if you're maybe new here and you enjoy the vibe. Would love to catch you back here for some videos here, especially in the future. And if you're interested in checking out, like, and seeing what Comp DBD is all about, I'm gonna make sure I leave those links down in the description below of those couple of organizations that I mentioned over the course of this video, all right? Some places that I shoutcast for. And of course, you can always stop on my stream as well. As always, we're also gonna leave that down in the description if you ever want to pull up and hang out with your boy in the community over in the fog. All right? But until our next video, well, as long as Spooks doesn't end my channel, for real, Spooks, love and respect, homie. Let's hash this out, man, for real. Don't forget, with everything crazy going on in the world today, be true, be you, be sincere, game hard and love harder. It's your boy Q, signing out.
If you ain't show something, you just don't wanna be. You wanna be me, but you will never be as fresh as see you.